So hello everyone, today we will have an unconventional tutorial. Today I will tell you basically how to use After Effects, because I started with complex tutorials. And I think there are beginners on my channel who want to understand the basics of After Effects. So I will show you how to use it, what it is, so you won't be afraid of this program. In fact, it's simpler than you think. And so, when you open After Effects, you will have, you could say, three main panels. This one here is the project panel. This one is the composition viewer. And this one is our timeline. The project panel is, you could say, our storage, where all our compositions, all our files, and all our photos will be located. So, if you delete something from here, it will disappear from the entire project. This panel here will be our composition. This is, so to speak, like an artboard, a workspace. So all manipulations with design, with building our frame, basically the entire appearance, everything we will see, will be our final video. The timeline is for animating. Well, you could say it's a panel where all our layers will be located. Our keyframes, animation keys. What do I always start my project with? It's creating a folder to better organize my project. If you click this button, a new folder will be created. A new folder is, roughly speaking, like you could say just like a folder on a computer or like grouping objects. If you select the folder and press enter, we can change its name. Let's name it, for example, main project. Next, I usually create 3 additional folders. These are all the files that I will be editing. Edit this. Then I will have in the next folder the composition of my render, that is, my final render of the project. And the third folder will be files that are better left untouched, some design files, icons, solids, any layers, everything I have in the project that is better not to delete, because without them the project will not work. So let's create our new composition. The first new composition, if we hover here, you will see that it says create new composition. We click here and we see the parameters for the composition name. Let's name it, let it be tutorial. Next, you can choose a specific preset. I usually do not use presets, or very rarely. Usually, I set everything manually. I usually set the resolution to 4K, which means it will be 3840 by 2160. If you want to do full HD, you can set the size to 1920 by 1080. These are the standard composition settings. Standard parameters for full HD, 4K, and 8K, depending on what suits you best, and depending on the size of the composition. The video will be of higher quality, but it will also take up more memory. The next tab is our pixels, their, so to speak, shape. Recipients with that, all these presets are usually for television. When I worked in the studio, I remember using PAL. In short, all these different presets. But it is usually better to use square pixels, that is, just regular square pixels. The frame rate tab refers to the number of frames per second. That is, if, for example, we have a composition duration of 1 second, I have 10 seconds here. If we have a composition duration of 1 second, then we will have, roughly speaking, 30 frames, 30, you could say, photos in 1 second. Full resolution can be changed later. If you have a weak computer, you can set a slightly lower quality to make it easier for your computer to handle. I was playing the animation, and then we have the composition duration tab, which indicates from which point we start. Usually for television, or in various situations, the time code needs to start not from 0, but in my case, I usually start from 0 and specify the duration. Let's say here I have 10 seconds. So here we can specify milliseconds, seconds, minutes, and hours of our composition. The next tab is background, color. It doesn't really affect much, but I usually find it more interesting to choose a different color. So, for example, if I have black text, I can see it on a black background. Because if you don't have any solids, meaning no fill, there will still be some kind of background usually. To make my text or some of my objects more visible, I choose something average. A color that is very rarely used, so my objects are unlikely to be the same color. And we click OK. Here we have created our first composition with a purple background. We have a timeline now. We can already create some layers here and create our animation. Well, to create our animation, we need to understand certain properties, certain capabilities of After Effects, how to create texts, how to make some basic elements, how to create shapes, how to add effects. We will go through all of this now, and after that, I think we will start working on the animation. So, to create your first design, for starters, let's create the simplest thing that is usually used in any design, in any animation. This is creating text. To create text, we hover over this panel, right-click, New, Text, and we write our text. The second option for creating text is to simply select the Type tool on this panel. You can select it by clicking the left mouse button, and by holding it down, you can choose horizontal text or vertical text. It depends on how we need to write the text. We can write horizontally or we can write vertically. It happens very rarely, but there have been situations where I wrote text vertically. But since we need it horizontally, we choose horizontally. Just click once and press on our workspace to create a layer. Here we have a layer. Then after this we can write. Let it be a tutorial. I simply and easily select my text using the Ctrl-A button to reduce it a bit. To reduce it a little bit, we simply need to use a panel called Character, which we can easily open through the Windows tab. Here will be all our panels. Here we see the Character tab. We just click on it. I won't press it because it's already open for me. And further, on this panel, we can reduce our font. We can decrease it when we have, for example, several lines. We can reduce the distance between the lines. And we can also decrease or increase the tracking, which is the distance between the letters. There are also many different parameters here, such as like making all the text bold, like uppercase or bolder. We can also stretch our text or expand it, but it's better not to touch these settings. We can also add a stroke to our text. We can click here, and this will be our stroke. And click, for example, here. It will select a white stroke color for us. And to disable it, you can click here. We don't need the stroke, so we simply disable it. And to switch back to our fill, we go here. I will change the text to another one. Let it be a tutorial in Ukrainian. So, this is the text I wrote. I am reducing its size. Let it be 150. The spacing between the lines is 150. I will remove all caps and also align it to the center using the paragraph tab. This is just like in Illustrator or Photoshop, you can align to the left, center, or right. I need it centered, meaning our text will start relative to the center of our artboard. And we also we have this main point around which our text rotates. It's the anchor point. We also need to move it to the center. This can be done using a tool called the anchor point tool. You can enable it either by pressing the Y key or by clicking here and manually move it to the center. But it's very difficult to understand where the center is. Therefore, you can use a tab called snapping. Select the anchor point tool and it will, so to speak, snap to the center, or you can do the same for any corner. The next panel that I use very often for basic work is called the Align tab. To use it, you also need to select the text, and you can, so to speak, center our text or object relative to our composition. If I simply need to center it horizontally and vertically, I click on this one. Align horizontally, and this button aligns vertically, meaning it centers the text relative to both the horizontal and vertical axes. We can check this using a tab like the title Action Safe, which shows us where the center is. Here we see that our anchor points are in the center of the composition, meaning this intersection of lines is our center. Good, it's not the decision-making center, otherwise the Russians would shell my After Effects. Since I don't like my font, I will change it. To do this, I will simply select my text and type here. I will use Helvetica, bold. And so, usually, animation occurs either through basic parameters, such as in the Transform panel, anchor point, position, scale, rotation and opacity, or depending on whether it is text or a shape. There are certain internal parameters for text. You can add various animators in the Animate panel. I will show for shape later. So, we have already written the text. Next, I want to create a shape. The shape will be, a shape is any form. There are certain basic shapes in After Effects, but it can essentially be arbitrary. We can draw using the pen tool. In today's tutorial, I will not be using the pen tool. I will use a basic shape. It will be a rectangle. And to create it, we right-click in this area, New, Shape. Next, we have parameters such as fill and stroke. We can click on the fill text and choose whether we want the fill to be visible, not visible, or visible. Then we can choose a linear gradient and we can choose a radial gradient. In my case, we just need a simple fill, so we select this solid color. Next, in the Add tab, we add, right here, we add a rectangle. We can choose an ellipse, like a star, just paste, if we want to draw any shape, but we need a rectangle. And also in the same tab, we add a fill. And if we look at our shape, we will see that it differs in parameters from our text. Here is the rectangle path, which includes the size of this rectangle. You can also have a position relative to the anchor point. And also roundness, you can actually, for example, turn it into a circle. The transform parameters are present in every shape, and we can also animate them. Yes, I want to move my rectangle a little lower. So I select this shape, press P. This is to open the show. Open scale, with S, rotation, with R, and for anchor point, I don't remember if there is a button to quickly open the anchor point. And also, if you hold Shift and additionally press P and S, we can open all these parameters at once. Yes, to change the position of our rectangle, we can see the position here and just move it down. Up or down, it's better for us to go down. And you can also move it horizontally if you need to. I will press Ctrl+C, but I don't need that. And my rectangle will be positioned somewhere around here. Next, I will go to the Rectangle Path tab. I will remove this thing, everything, so that we can change proportionally, horizontally and vertically separately, because if I just change it, we will just have a square. And I need a rectangle. So we click on this thing and change the size to approximately, I don't know, let it be something like this. And also the roundness. Let it be 50. Let it be more. 60 is too much. 45. Oh, that's fine. And now we will add our first effect to our rectangle. To add an effect, we need the Effects tab. I don't have it here because I am using a quick tool that you can download. I don't remember from whom, but it's called Console FX. So I can quickly add effects if you know the name of the effect, but if you don't know the name of the effect, then you need the tab. And to find that tab, we need again Windows, Effects and Presets. And we will write the effect 4-color gradient here, so I'm a bit hard to see. Let's move the effects. Here is our effect 4-color gradient, which is a gradient made up of 4 colors. To apply this effect, you can select the layer and either double click or, for example, just drag it here, and it will appear in the Effect Controls panel. This will appear when you add certain effects. And if I accidentally close this tab, I can select the layer again, go to Effects and Effects Control. And you can also open it another way. On Mac, it's Fen plus F3. On Windows, it seems to be either Alt F3 or Control F3. So here we have our 4-color gradient effect. We have, so to speak, 4 sliders for 4 different colors. We can move them here or just select the effect and manually drag it closer to the text so that our colors appear, because they were very far away and it was quite blurry. We will also change it to change the color easily. We click on the color and a color panel appears, and we choose any color we need. Here we can add a small text so that if this is our design, there is some call to action. And here I added a small text like subscribe. Well, if you understood, this was a hint for you to subscribe to my channel. Next, we will create another graphic element. Let's say our logo will be placed here. I will add it to our project now. And for example, there will be some graphic element on the right. To create a graphic element, simply allow it to be this popular trendy star. To create it, we also right-click, select New, then Shape. We add it. Star shape. We add fill, open the star parameters, change the number to 6, and we can change the size type of the star, which we don't need. Adjusting, increasing, decreasing the inner and outer sizes. We need the outer roundness tab, although I think we also need the inner radius. Yes, we need both inner radius and outer radius. We reduce them, let it be a little more, 75. Here is a graphic element that looks something like this, a graphic star. And let's also change its color to be the same white. Let's change the size a bit. And yes, I almost forgot, we definitely need to save our project. I press Ctrl S, desktop. I will have a folder for my tutorial. It will be named tutorial for now, and save everything. There have been cases when you are working. I had such cases when I worked for an hour and a half or 2 hours, and I simply forgot to save the project. Then something crashes, something goes wrong, and After Effects just freezes, and I lose several hours of work. And I will tell you, it's a very unpleasant experience when you just sit and remember, trying to recover what you did. There have been times when it was 2-3 hours and even more. You just sit and try to recreate something similar or the same, especially if it's something complex. It's really not an easy task, so be sure to save your projects more often. And so next, to add a logo or any video, photo, any live photos, anything to our project, we need this panel. We go here, hover the mouse, click the right button, and select Import. Import file. Then we enter. I am not entirely sure where your specific file is located that you wish to upload. Mine, however, is somewhere around here, my personal logo. Here, Ctrl+C, Ctrl+V. I will add the invert effect to make it the same color. Invert, meaning it inverts colors, for example, from black to white, from white to red. Oh, black, there. If it will be some, conditionally, I don't know. Red will be some reverse. This is a pretty good effect. Sometimes it helps to quickly change colors. Let's change the scale a bit. Yes, and in this case, I need to align it relative to my disk, my logo. For this, we press Ctrl+R. And a tab of guides appears. We can just hover here and pull out a line that will serve as our guide. And we can, for example, place it here, and with the mouse, just scroll back with the wheel to zoom out, zoom in, and also scroll in the other direction. And we see that our logo doesn't quite fit our guideline, and we need to lower it a bit with Shift. We will also enable Title Action Safe and align it a bit according to our safe zones. This is usually important if you are working on something for television, advertising, or any videos. You need to align within this title action safe, because your material simply won't be accepted if it is later broadcast on television or elsewhere, as it won't fit the screen and will be cut off. So they pay close attention to this. Let's align the text a bit relative to our composition. It looks a little better to me. The next step is to add additional footage to some video. I will now add a video that I have on my computer to serve as our background. This is the video I added, but I don't want it to be a complete background. I want to have a rectangle mask here, and I want it to be attached to a specific contour to a certain area and displayed only there. And now I will show how to create this mask, which will, so to speak, show only a certain part of this background. To do this, we simply create another additional shape, add a tangle, add a fill, and set its size. For example, to reduce the composition a little bit, instead of guessing the numbers to write, we can write down if I know I need to decrease the size here by approximately 100 pixels. So for instance, 50 here and 50 there. I just write it like in math, like on a calculator, minus 100. And our size decreases by 100. Oh, right. I forgot that our composition size is not 3840, but 1920. Oh, minus 100. And here we see that our width has changed by, well, about 50 pixels. I want to do the same for the height. And I will also add a round, let it be 150. Oh, approximately just what we need. And so on. We have the Mate tab, this track mate, and we simply have a few parameters here that will appear right now. For example, I need the mask, like this rectangle will serve as a mask for this background. And I just select, well, in After Effects 2024 it seems, or in 2023, this pick whip appears, which you can simply drag onto any layer, and it will like attach and become a mask for that layer. Because in older versions, as far as I remember, it was necessary for example, this layer. It had to be placed either on top or below. You had to click Alpha Track Matte or Alpha Luma Matte, it seems, on a specific layer. And here it's cool, because you can drag it regardless of the position of the layer on which line. You can drag it, well, apply this mask. In my case, we need our pilot, my background, to be it should only show where this mask is. So I simply drag the pick whip onto this shape, and we can see that our background is specifically visible only where our shape is. If we conditionally increase or decrease it, it will only show according to the size of our shape. Also, if we want to say an inverted mask, we can click here. Then the other side of our background will be revealed, while this rectangle, so to speak, will be cut out. But we don't need that, so we go back. So the next step I want to animate is everything that is drawn here. And for this, I want it all to appear in terms of scale, and then I will add certain effects. For this, I select all the layers and add, right-click, and add a zero object. A null object is like an empty object that can be used to animate anything. It is not visible, but it provides additional power. In animation, you can animate the same parameter twice. Yes, all our objects are not attached to the null. We need to use this pairing. Press S, set our first key at the beginning on the timeline, click here, and go to the second to set the second key. Then, to quickly move between keys, you can use this tool. It will jump between keys because doing it manually is actually very complicated and inconvenient. We increase the value here to 250. If we press space, the animation will play, but it is very linear, just too boring. To make it more interesting, we select our two keys and go to the graph editor. This is our panel with animation graphs. Depending on how we change this graph, our animation will be either sharp or slow. Let's select our two keys once again. We press F9 and we see that our graph has become smooth. At first it moves, for example, 5 pixels per second and gains speed faster, and then up to 100. And then smoothly back. We need to make our animation a bit sharper, so we take this one. We take the slider and drag it almost to the center, and this one as well. The setting there was 87, so here about 87 too. And look, it already looks more interesting. It starts very slowly, then very sharply, then again slowly. To add more dynamics, I will also add scale to our text. I will animate it additionally to the previous scale. Also, for example, at 200, and we will have something like an overlap, a kind of double animation on the scale. I will quickly set the value to 87 using the motion tool, and here's what we will get now. I also want to animate additionally my text, my rectangle, this shape, and my logo. But as it is, if I look like this, I can't see anything. So I go to the end, select my logo, the star, the subscription, and the rectangle. And, holding Ctrl, I just click on this thing, and the selection of our objects will be removed and nothing will be animated. Then you can switch to solo mode. This is if you click here. We will only see the elements that I will select now. I want to animate my logo. To the left, I press P for position, and the position property opens, and I also go to the second. I set a key, go back, and I animate to the left. I do the same for the star, P. I set a keyframe, move to the second, set a second keyframe, go back to the beginning, and animate to the right, setting the same value of 87. If you check, we will have a value of 87 here approximately. I will also animate the rectangle and text using position as well, and that's it. The position keyframe goes down again, But here I will do a little trick and create a small overlap as well. More precisely, not an overlap, but actually a delay. Like with a delay, I will just shift my text a few keyframes to the right, to a few frames to be exact. I will make it so that my text is still visible, and here's what we will get. The text will appear later, but if we look at it, not in solo mode, and link all our layers back to 0, we will get an interesting animation where the text will come with a delay to the rectangle. Also, for added interest and better animation, we can add rotation to our star, for example. We set 2 keyframes. Go to the first one, let it be 360. Solo mode is off for faster animation. And here's what we get. Here is the animation. In this case, I don't like my solid, my fill right now, so I can just press, for example, Ctrl-K and change the color here to white. But there is one problem. If I click, for example, enable transparency, then I will have a transparent area here. And if I don't want it to be transparent, I can just add a solid. Choose white color or any arbitrary one. In this case, I will not have transparency now. There will be no transparency. Now there will be a full fill, a full solid. Yes. And the last block will be like, since we have already done our animation. Although we can still add, for example, opacity animation to the text, so that our text does not appear immediately, so that we don't see it, making the reveal more interesting. Let's drag it a bit more dynamically somewhere here, to the right or left, and let it be something like this, and adjust the position carefully to achieve the desired effect as we have planned in our storyboard. Since we already have the animation, the last block will be rendering our animation and ensure smooth transitions between each frame. We have the work area here, which is the area we want to render. You can, for example, press the hotkeys B and on the right side N to quickly select the render area, or simply manually choose the specific area we want to render, that is, to get the final video. For me, this will be, if I open it with the U key to see all our keyframes, this will be a full animation of 2 seconds. Let it be 3.5 seconds, so that the person who will see this design, this animation, has time to read the text, so it will be 3.5 seconds. And then I click, open the file, export. You can render using Adobe Media Encoder if you have it installed. There will be a wider selection. You can export in any format right away. But generally, it is enough for me to render using the render queue. So I click Add to Render Queue. I choose Best Settings. Never. Well, unless I want to quickly render something just to see if it looks okay, then I take, for example, half or third. It will be dividing, so to speak. If it's full HD, it will be divided by 2, meaning 1920 and 1080 will be divided by 2. If it's full, it will be full HD, and quality is always best. In principle, nothing needs to be changed. Further, here in the tab, I have H.264, which is our classic standard MP4, a classic one video format in which, in principle, most videos are. In general, formats and codecs are another additional video. I think in the future I will record it, but for now we simply choose H.264. And if, for example, we had a transparent background here, we could choose additional RGB plus alpha, and then it would render with an alpha background. But this seems only possible if we just have QuickTime. So in QuickTime, we simply select H.264, click OK, choose where to render and click render, and here is what we got, our final animation. If anything was unclear from this basic lesson, please write comments and ask. In principle, I am always open to conversations and any questions. I will help you solve your problem or task, because I remember how I would just sit for hours or even days or weeks just looking for any button that I really needed, but I didn't understand what it was. And here, I can be that person who helps you quickly find those buttons or effects or how to do something, so you don't struggle like I did and don't waste too much time. So, like, subscribe, and see you in the next tutorial.